Okay, so how am I going to solve all of your painting problems in this video? I'm going to solve them by talking and breaking down the fundamentals of painting. Hello and welcome to Paint Talk, the weekly show where I sit, have a cup of coffee, and just kind of talk about oil painting. If you're new to the channel, then welcome to Paint Coach. My name is Chris Fornatero, and I am here to help simplify oil painting so that you can get better faster. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that the answer to all of your painting problems lie in the fundamentals. I know that sounds crazy, it may not make sense, you might not even fully believe it. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have believed it when I was first starting painting. If someone came up and told me like, hey, it's all about the fundamentals, you need to understand the fundamentals, that's where all the answers lie, I probably wouldn't have believed them, and I probably wouldn't have looked there. But I wish I had, because I would have saved myself years. So what exactly are the painting fundamentals? Is there a list of them somewhere? Is there a designated list? I didn't go and like find like an exact list, like these are the fundamentals that I focus on. You might be able to take one away or add some that I don't have here, but I feel like these are the core ones that any painter would say like, yeah, those are very important. And they are drawing, value, color, edges, and composition. So let's start out with drawing. If you're trying to do portraits and you just can't get a likeness and you're constantly looking on YouTube, how do you get a likeness of a portrait? It's mostly because you're drawing. I'd say about 99% of the portraits I see from beginner painters have a lot of drawing issues. And honestly, you know, drawing is probably the hardest of the fundamentals, in my opinion, to really get down. Because, you know, drawing is like the ability to look at something and observe it and be able to use observational skills to recreate that on a canvas or paper or whatever. You know, things like value and color, it's more of like understanding things and looking at things a certain way, whereas drawing is actually like a physical thing of being able to hand-eye coordination, of being able to compare, and it just takes a lot of practice. There's no way around it. It just takes a lot of time and practice to get better at drawing. And when I say drawing, that doesn't mean, you know, always pencil and paper or charcoal or whatever. You know, you're drawing when you're painting. Even if you're just sketching it in with paint, that's drawing. Even during the process of you painting, you're still having to identify where things are. I feel that's more of what drawing is for painting. You know, whether I'm drawing a landscape, still life, portrait, I don't do a very detailed drawing. I'm kind of making a blueprint or a map. I'm figuring out where things are, but then as I paint it and I develop it and I'm adding paint, I'm still having to make adjustments of where things are. I wish I could tell you some tips and tricks to get better at drawing, but it really just comes down to sheer practice. I get a lot of people asking me like, should I just worry about practicing drawing before I start painting? I say no, you'll learn to draw as you paint. But some things to help you get a good drawing and still get some practice in. You can use a proportional divider. It's like a little measuring device. I have a link to where you can get one in the description below. It helps you get some basic measurements. A lot of times with portraits, I'll kind of find out, you know, how far down from the top of the head are the eyes, and I'll make a mark. How much further down is the nose, and I'll make a mark. And I'll use that proportional divider to find those measurements on my reference image. Another thing is just making a very simple, I guess you'd call it a grid. A lot of times when I have a landscape, I'll literally find the center of my reference image and put a line going down, another one going horizontally, and then that's it. So now at least I know where dead center is. You know, I got these 4 basic quadrants that makes it a little more simple. But also just using, you know, the frame in which you're painting, a lot of times I'll look and be like, all right, where does this mountain go off of the canvas? Like, oh, it looks like it's, you know, about a quarter of the way down from the top. You know, oh, where does this part of the ocean go off of the canvas? It's like, oh, it, you know, looks like it's a little bit below halfway down the canvas. And just doing little things like that can give you enough information to construct a more accurate drawing. Okay, fundamental number 2 is value. Keeping it simple, value is how light or dark a color is. There's a saying that value does all the work, but color gets all the credit. I find this to be absolutely true. We don't forgive value like we forgive color. You can do a painting and the colors be completely off, but if the values are correct, the painting will still read. Meaning if you took a picture of that painting and put it in black and white, it'd still work. A helpful way to see value is squinting your eyes. When you squint your eyes, it actually gets rid of color. If you do that, you will see very easily what's darker than what's lighter than what. And the better you get at seeing value and value relationships, the better you're going to be able to handle it and subtly control it. So next time you're struggling with the painting, check the values. Are your values correct? You know, take a picture of your painting, put it in black and white, put your reference photo in black and white, and compare. All right, next fundamental is color. Now this is a big one. I get asked about color all the time. Honestly, I feel people complicate color way more than they should. Now, I always say, especially if you're starting out, start with the primaries in white. It's ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium lemon, titanium white. Yeah, are there other versions of those primaries that use, like, oh, could I use cadmium red instead of alizarin crimson? Yeah. Oh, what about cadmium yellow? Like, yes, you can do that. Yes, and there are artists out there that say, oh, I like to use this set of the primary as opposed to this set because it allows me to do this and that. If you're starting out with oil painting, meaning like if you're into your first 5 or 7 years of oil painting and you're kind of going down that color rabbit hole, I wouldn't recommend it. There's a lot more important things that you should be focusing on with your work that will make you a better painter. As far as starting out, I don't know, to me, that's like you're first starting to learn how to play baseball, and one of the first things you're trying to learn how to do is like a very advanced curveball. Like, it's like, learn just to throw the ball first, learn to catch the ball, hit the ball, like all the basic stuff, so like really get that down, you know, then worry about throwing a crazy knuckleball or something. Also, the thing is, when you do just the primaries in white, you're going to develop a very strong understanding of color, so that later on when you do add other colors to your palette, you understand where they come from. Like, I'll use burnt sienna, you know, that's not one of the primaries, but I see it as a red. It's just like a very desaturated red. So when I put it on my palette, I'm using it as a shortcut. I'm using it as a shortcut to get to certain colors, but I understand what I'm skipping when I'm using that shortcut. I found that when beginners start to just buy a bunch of different colors, that becomes their solution to learning to mix color. Instead of learning color and understanding it at its base core principles, they just go out and just buy a specific color that they can't mix. And I get people asking me like, oh, like, well, aren't there certain colors that you can't mix from the primaries? Like, what about a turquoise? It's like, no, I can mix the turquoise, aqua green, or whatever very easily. Ultramarine blue, cadmium lemon, and titanium white. You got to balance those out, you know, very carefully, and it might take you a while to get it, but you can get it. There might be some like artificial type colors, you know, in like a lot of times if you're painting, there's like street lights or something, you need like a very bright red for a street light. It helps to have a cadmium red opposed to an alizarin crimson, even though you could put some yellow with that alizarin crimson and some white and get, you know, pretty close. But if you want something to pop like a light or something like very specific like that, it can help to have, you know, a certain color. I can't think of many off of the top of my head. It's not enough for you to be worrying about right now. So I always say, you know, getting the right color is about isolating a color in your reference and then matching that color. I don't care if it's a skin tone. I don't care if it's a green in a tree. Whatever it is, it's as simple as you got to isolate it, figure out exactly what that color is, isolate it, get it by itself, you know, punch a hole in an index card and put it over your reference, or, you know, crop in if you're looking on a computer and just get it by itself. And I always say, try to identify it as one of the primaries first. Like, all right, that's a, you know, a blue, but it's a very desaturated kind of reddish blue. You know, always start there. Always try and start there. And then as you're mixing, all you're thinking is, does it need more blue? Does it need more yellow? Does it need more red? Or does it need more white? And when you keep it that simple, it makes it easier to not get confused. Because think about if you're saying like, all right, how do I get to this color? And you got 12 different colors. Like, oh, well, what should I add to, you know, get to that color? Should I add sap green or cerulean blue, some crimson? Like, what do I add? I got 12 different choices. It's going to be very confusing. If you really struggle with color, nobody's kind of taught you the primaries in white and the color wheel and all that good stuff. I go over it in my Foundations of Oil Painting course, and you can actually get the color mixing video from that course for free. I'll put a link to where you can get that in the description below. All right, next we're going to talk about edges. You can have a whole lot of different kind of edges in your paint. You can have hard edges, soft edges, broken edges, and it's a great way to indicate the makeup of whatever the subject is that you're painting. Like a lot of times with hair on a portrait, I'll go back in with the background color and kind of soften certain edges because it better translates the texture of hair. You know, hair is soft and it's made up of, you know, thousands of little itty bitty tiny hairs that, you know, light gets through some, and if there's a lot of them, it doesn't get through as much. And so having that softer edge is going to better portray the feel of hair opposed to, you know, this very hard solid edge, which I'd want to use for something that was solid. Like, you know, if I'm painting a house and there's the roof, you know, that roof, I'm going to actually want to make a very good, strong, solid mark with a nice hard edge. Whereas if there was trees behind that building, you know, leaves are constantly moving. Some leaves are denser than others. There's light coming through, some others. So having softer edges in trees a lot of the times better portrays trees. And having a variety of edges is just another tool that you can use to make your paintings better. So if I'm painting, you know, the barn with the trees behind it, the soft edges of these trees contrasted with the hard edge of the tin roof of the barn is going to look nice, and it's going to give, you know, the viewer a variety of edges and better portray, you know, the scene and the objects that make up the scene. Okay, simplification. This is a big one. This is probably my favorite one. You know, being able to look at something and simplify it is at its core, I feel, what painters do. There's a very good landscape painter named Jim McVicker who once said, you know, he feels like his job as a landscape painter is to take this, you know, visual assault, as he said, like of colors and shapes and everything that most people would see and not even know how to decipher it or break it down. And his job is to simplify that and put it on a canvas, and doing that and knowing what to simplify and what to put on that canvas and what to leave out. So later on, someone could look at that painting and have the effect of that scene. When you're painting, if you ever feel overwhelmed by the subject matter, if it seems like there's so much going on, you don't know where to start and you get lost and you're confused, it's because you haven't developed the skill of being able to simplify. Like if you see a whole bunch of, you know, rocks and you're like, oh, like where do I start? There's all these different shadows and this and that. Like where do I go? Simplify it. Squint your eyes, break it down into its most broad, basic shapes first, and then slowly identify smaller and smaller shapes. You will be surprised at how far along your painting will look and how well it will look just by accurately blocking out the big shapes. Like if you're doing a landscape, you can block it out in, you know, 5 or 6 big shapes and just the correct value. You'll be like, oh wow, like I feel like I'm halfway done. I feel like I could finish this painting now without even using the reference because I've got everything blocked out. In this process of simplifying, it's true even if you do want to take your painting to a very detailed level by the end. You still have to start with blocking out the big shapes and the big values and getting your painting to work there first, and then developing detail on top of that. You don't want to develop detail on top of a structure that is wrong. All right, and last is composition. Now I know a while back I asked if anybody would like for me to make a video just on composition. A lot of you said yes, I'm working on it. It's a hard subject to kind of tackle and not just be completely boring and academic, but composition is huge. It's really huge with landscapes. It took me a long time to get a sense of composition. I always felt like it was by far my weakest aspect as a landscape painter. I'd go out and be like, I don't even know what to see. Like, where do I crop things off? Like, where, you know, I'm supposed to be moving things if I need to. Like, what leads the eye? It takes time. A lot of composition is just doing things not to ruin your composition. Like, you don't want lines going off directly in the corners of your canvas. You don't want to split your canvas up evenly. Like, you don't want an even band of ocean and then an even band of sky. You don't want to put your focal point dead center. There's just a lot of things like that, and it comes into play with anything that you're painting, even, you know, a still life. Like I did painting of some flowers, and I took a long time to arrange them and figure out a composition that, you know, led the viewer into the painting to the main flower that I wanted. You know, I had another flower in the background kind of directing you back to that main flower. But just understanding how to guide the viewer's eye through the painting is going to help you a lot. So I promise I will make a video just on composition soon, because there is just so much that you can get into with composition. And once you get it, it will really help your work. All right, that's it for this week's Paint Talk. If you have any questions or comments about anything that I talked about, leave those questions or comments in the comment section. That's how I figure out new videos. I see what people are talking about, what questions people have, and I try and use that to make better videos. Now, if you want some full in-depth instruction on these fundamentals. That is exactly what my Foundations of Oil Painting course is based on. I'll put a link to where you can get that in the description below. Also down there, it's linked to my Patreon page where I have full painting video tutorials. And if you want to see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. I'm Chris Fornatero here telling you to go get painting.